A man sentenced to death with only 24 hours left to live, and one final wish. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He doesn't plead for a second chance. All he wants is to see his dog again, the only friend he had during all those lonely years. But what happens when that wish doesn't just change his life, but shakes the entire justice system to its core? Don't miss this story of friendship, betrayal, and long-buried secrets. The iron door slammed shut, leaving behind only the fading sound of footsteps and the wind howling through the bars. Elias Monroe, 48, sat motionless on the edge of the cold bed in cell 14, the deepest cell on death row. He didn't look at the clock anymore. He knew every second of it by heart, 24 hours. 3 sunrises left before the rope tightened around his neck. Every appeal had been denied, every plea ignored. To them, Elias was a cold-blooded killer. To himself, he was just a man betrayed by the very system he once believed was justice. A news bulletin crackled from the hallway radio, detached like reading the weather. Execution of Elias Monroe scheduled for Friday, 7 a.m. No family to claim the body, no funeral requested. No one had visited in 5 years. But today, Elias broke the silence. He handwrote a single-line letter to Warden Holt. "I would like to see Dakota one last time." Dakota. The ash-gray Australian Shepherd Elias had rescued from a train track when it was just a few months old. The only soul still tied to him, the only one who never left him, human or not. Warden Holt read the letter in his office, sitting in silence for several minutes. In over 30 years on the job, he'd never seen a death row request like this. Some asked for one last cigarette, some wanted a chaplain. But a dog? He picked up the phone and dialed an internal number. "Prepare a special request file, send it to the Department of Corrections." "For who, sir?" "A dog. A dog. Just do it. Urgent, before tomorrow morning." Meanwhile, Marla Jensen, 45, was feeding Dakota dinner at her cabin on the edge of town. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. The call came from the Arizona State Penitentiary. She answered, and in the first 15 seconds, her face turned pale. He asked to see Dakota," she whispered, voice trembling. Dakota looked up, ears pricking as if sensing something. There was something in his eyes, an ancient instinct long lost to humans. Marla stood up, walked to the bedroom, and pulled out her suitcase. She didn't ask why Elias wanted to see Dakota. She only knew one thing. If she didn't leave now, there would be no second chance. And from that moment, the clock began ticking, not just for Elias, but for everything that had remained buried over the last 5 years. A race against time had quietly begun, and none of them knew everything was about to change. Forever. The silver SUV sped down Interstate 60. The clock read 10:47 p.m. Marla Jensen gripped the steering wheel tightly, eyes locked on the road ahead as if blinking might cost her something she could never get back. In the back seat, Dakota lay calmly, but his ears stood alert, eyes fixed on the window. He didn't bark, didn't whimper, just watched. As if he knew he was about to see the one person who had once been his entire world. Exactly 5 years ago, in the death row visitation hallway, Marla had looked at Elias through a thick pane of glass. Back then, they both believed he would be exonerated, but every appeal denied, every witness suddenly changing their story. Hope had shattered like glass. And Marla, the woman who had once sworn to stand by Elias no matter what, had never returned. Not because she didn't love him, but because she was too afraid to see him broken. Back at the Arizona State Penitentiary, Warden Holt received a response from the Department of Corrections. The signature on the approval letter belonged to none other than Governor Richards himself, something that had never happened before. This one time only, and absolutely no press, the memo stated clearly. He sat alone in his office, staring once more at Elias Monroe's death row file. Something didn't add up. A simple murder case. Clear evidence. Witness testimonies that matched too perfectly. As if someone had laid every puzzle piece down ahead of time. He picked up the phone and called Travis McKean, the former lead investigator on the case. "Travis, it's Holt. Haven't heard your voice in a while, Warden. What's going on?" "I need you to revisit the Elias Monroe case. Something's off." "I thought so too at first, but the file's clean." "Too clean, Travis. That's the problem." There was silence on the other end. Then McKean spoke slowly. "Someone once tried to pay me off to keep quiet. I said no. A week later, they had enough evidence to take Elias to trial. I thought it was odd, but now Now it's too late. Not yet. Send me the file. I'll go through every page. Marla turned onto the dirt road leading to the prison. The headlights lit up the towering steel gates, still and silent like a graveyard. Dakota sat up and barked once. Sharp, certain. Marla rolled down the window, looked straight ahead. I've brought Dakota per Elias Monroe's request. The gates began to open, slowly. But to Marla, they opened more than just a facility. They opened a past she thought she had buried for good. And deep inside, Elias still didn't know. This final meeting might just be the beginning of everything. 3:17 a.m. The fluorescent light flickered in cell 14. Unable to sleep, Elias sat by the cold wall, holding a crumpled, faded photograph, the only thing left from the life he had before prison. In the photo, a younger Elias grinning wide with Dakota and Marla beneath a canopy of golden maple leaves. In that moment, he had felt invincible. But 3 weeks later, a midnight phone call destroyed everything. If you don't take the fall, I'll drag that woman down with you. That gravelly voice had haunted Elias ever since. No name, no trace, just a chilling threat from a force he couldn't see. 3 days later, he was arrested with what they called irrefutable evidence. Fingerprints on the knife, bloodstains on his jacket, and a witness who claimed to have seen him at the scene. But Elias knew he wasn't there that night. He was driving for work 300 miles away from where it happened. Strangely, the gas station security camera, where he'd stopped that night, suddenly malfunctioned, and the station owner disappeared 48 hours later. Marla's testimony? It was never entered into the official record. Police deemed her romantically involved with the defendant, and therefore unreliable. Elias had planned to tell everything at trial. He was ready to name the man who had threatened him, but that very morning, Marla was in a car accident. Broken ribs, a skull fracture. She didn't die. But it was enough to make Elias understand, if he spoke, the next person wouldn't be so lucky. So Elias stayed silent through the entire trial, a silence that stunned even his lawyer. He pled guilty, knowing he was innocent upon sacrifice to protect the woman he loved. Now, 5 years had passed. Marla was still alive. Dakota was still alive, and he had nothing left to lose. If this is the end, I won't die in silence again, Elias murmured. Just then, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The metallic clank of keys, the door opened. Warden Holt stepped in, eyes weary, holding a thick folder. I need your signature to authorize this morning's visit. Dakota's on her way. Elias stood. I'll sign, but first, I need you to hear something I've kept hidden for 5 years. Holt paused, eyes narrowing. I'm listening. And Elias began to speak, not in the hope of being saved, but because for the first time he was ready to live like a man, unafraid and no longer in debt to silence. Travis McKean, 63 years old, salt and pepper hair, a sun-weathered face etched with the deep lines of regret, stood in the middle of his small office near the shores of Lake Michigan. On the desk sat an old case box labeled Case Monroe Closed. But he knew some things never really ended. 5 years ago, he was the one who knocked on Elias Monroe's apartment door at 4 a.m. and read him the arrest warrant. At the time, the case seemed airtight. Eyewitness placed Elias at the scene, physical evidence lined up, the motive was clear. The murder of an investor who'd lost money in a project Elias had managed. But there was something no one else knew. From the very beginning, Travis had a gut feeling that didn't sit right. A kid like him doing something like that? No history of violence, no drinking, no debts. Travis had told his supervisor just that, but was dismissed. Don't poke around. This case came from upstairs. Stick to the file. At the time, he was drowning in medical debt for his wife. His retirement papers had mysteriously been put on hold. Then a thick envelope showed up in his desk drawer. No name, no note. He knew exactly what it meant, and he stayed silent. Today, Holt called back, saying Elias was ready to confess something. A name had come up, Walton Green. The moment Travis heard it, he shot to his feet. Walton had surfaced in another case years ago, just as strange. A notorious fixer, known for cleaning up financial messes for the ultra-wealthy at any cost. Never left a trace. No bank accounts, no criminal record. Like a ghost. Travis powered up his old computer, typing carefully into an internal database he still accidentally had access to after retirement. And then, something popped. A shell company in Belize had transferred funds 24 hours before Elias's arrest. The recipient, a private security firm that had once hired Walton Green as a consultant. Travis quickly printed it out, snapped a photo, and sent a copy to Holt with a single line, "Someone wanted Elias erased, and I think I know who." At that very moment, inside the prison cell, Elias stared directly at Warden Holt. "His name is Walton Green. I've never seen him, but I know his voice. He called me the night before I was arrested." Holt frowned. "That name's not in any of the files." "Exactly why I had to stay silent. He's not some thug. He is the system." Holt stepped into the hallway just as his phone buzzed. A text from Travis McKean. One line only. "We're sitting on a bomb, and it's about to blow." 3:52 a.m. A silver pickup truck tore down I-57 through a thick curtain of fog. Marla, her hair hastily tied back, eyes darkened from a sleepless night, gripped the steering wheel like steel. In the back seat, Dakota panted heavily, eyes glued to the window. He sensed something different, like this trip wasn't like the others. Her phone buzzed. A blocked number. Marla didn't want to answer, but instinct forced her to. "If you still want to stay alive, pull over." That voice. Low, even, not loud, but cold enough to freeze her blood. "This isn't about Elias anymore. This is about people who can make you disappear without a single question asked." "I'm not afraid of you anymore," Marla shouted. "He's about to die. I'm bringing Dakota to him. And you, why don't you show your damn face?" Click. The call ended. But the silence that followed was even more terrifying than the threat itself. Marla gripped the wheel tighter, eyes flicking to Dakota in the rearview mirror. "We're getting there, no matter what." At Jackson Penitentiary, Warden Holt stared at the financial report from Travis McKean. Everything matched perfectly, too perfectly to be a coincidence. Someone had bought Elias's conviction. Someone had paid to cover up all the evidence. And now the name Walton Green had resurfaced like a ghost after years of silence. Holt turned to his subordinate. "Lock down the access system. From now on, only I will receive any documents related to Elias Monroe's case. No copies, no cloud storage." The young guard nodded, but his eyes betrayed confusion. "Sir, there's one more thing. A reporter named Jaden Maris just called. He asked why the execution was postponed for 48 hours without a press release." Holt blinked. That question, no one outside the inner circle should know about it. Someone had caught wind of trouble. And if this leaked to the press, a media storm would drown everything, from the prosecutor's office to the state government. He picked up the phone and called Travis. "We have less than 4 hours to bring something to light. If you're right, this won't just save Elias, it will expose a legalized killing machine." Travis's voice came through, hoarse. "I traced the phone number used to threaten Elias. You won't believe it. It's an internal line from the Federal Private Security Coordination Bureau." Holt slumped into his chair. "Damn it, this isn't a case anymore. This is an underground war." And the clock was still ticking, 1 a.m. In a small house nestled deep in the woods outside Chicago, Travis McKean knelt beside a safe hidden behind an old painting on the wall. The combination needed to be entered 3 times to unlock it. His hands trembled, not because of his age, but because he knew what he was about to pull out could make him disappear forever. A stack of yellowed documents bound in leather was marked G36 Special Committee Confidential 2019. Travis took out his phone, turned on the camera, and quickly flipped through each page. Bank transfer transactions, minutes from closed-door meetings, reports from investment risk management units. A brief memo with the line, "Green has completed the task. The target has been neutralized through legal channels." The target? Elias Monroe. The documents didn't write his name, but they referenced an EM19A, an internal code that completely matched Elias's case file from 5 years ago. He sent the entire copy through an encrypted channel to Holt, but suddenly his phone flashed a warning. "Device being accessed without authorization. Power off immediately." Travis's heart pounded. Someone had traced his steps, and they never leave a loophole unless they're ready to eliminate a witness. At the prison, Holt received an email just as he was preparing to sign the notification document for the state governor. His eyes quickly scanned each photo, each page hitting him like a hammer. Elias had been put through a risk cleaning process for individuals who wouldn't back down in a major deal. Walton Green was compensated with offshore stock and anonymous investment rights in financial projects in Eastern Europe. Two initial witnesses had their testimonies coached by a team of outsourced legal experts. Holt barked at his assistant, "Call the governor immediately, not through the secretary, directly." But the assistant just shook his head, pale-faced. "Sir, the governor's office hasn't taken internal calls from the security system in the last 30 minutes. There's a lock on the channel. They're only accepting information through the government channel." A silent lockdown. The system was protecting itself, and Elias only had a few hours left to live. At the same time, Marla slammed on the brakes in front of the prison gate, the tires screeching in a trail of black marks. She jumped out, Dakota barking loudly. The guard ran over. "What's your name?" "Marla Jensen. I have clearance from Holt. I'm bringing Dakota to see Elias Monroe." "Sorry, the list has been changed. No more visits scheduled for this morning." Marla froze. Who changed it? An order from the Office of the Attorney General, above Holt's authority. A power had intervened, and they acted fast. 1:25 a.m. Marla stood in front of the prison gate, her hands tightly gripping the file and Dakota's leash. The cold was biting, but sweat still beaded on the back of her neck. Dakota growled low, sensing that something was wrong. "I'm not going anywhere," Marla said to the guard, her voice trembling with anger and desperation. "If I have to, I'll sleep right here at the gate until Elias gets out. You can't just remove my name from the list with a keystroke." The guard stared at her for a moment. Then his expression softened. "Go around to the back. There's a service entrance, usually used for staff during the night shift. I'll try to distract control for 2 minutes. Don't make me regret this." Marla didn't say a word. She pulled Dakota around to the side of the facility where a metal door was slightly ajar. Before stepping through, she turned back to look at the main gate one last time. As if to mark the moment when the law officially stepped back and a regular woman decided to do something extraordinary. Inside the death row section, Elias Monroe sat motionless on the metal chair. The fluorescent light above flickered, like the aging heart of a dying monster. He didn't know that the world was in turmoil outside because of him. He didn't know that Travis had risked his life to expose Green. He didn't know that Marla was navigating the hallways to bring Dakota to him. Elias knew only one thing. The time left could be counted by the rhythm of his breaths. "Security control room," Holt shouted. "Which system is blocking our signals?" "We don't know, sir. All internal communication channels are being redirected to a proxy in Ukraine." An engineer screamed from the coordination desk. "There's an unusual signal infiltrating the main server. Looks like video data from the prison." Holt rushed to the screen, and what he saw froze him in place. The camera feed had been replaced with a pre-recorded video. The scene kept looping. An empty hallway, a patrolling guard, silence. But in reality, this video had been shot 3 days ago. Someone had completely blinded the surveillance system. And in that darkness, a woman and a dog were sneaking toward the one person the world wanted to forget. So 1:45, Marla slid down the final hallway, the door marked in red. Death row. No unauthorized access. Dakota stopped, its ears perked up, its eyes gleamed like it had just heard a familiar heartbeat somewhere very close. And then, the door swung open. Elias Monroe stood there. The three of them, in the strangest moment of their lives, had met, just before the dawn of a battle for justice. 47 a.m. Elias Monroe could hardly believe his eyes. The woman with the tangled hair, her face soaked with the night's mist, was Marla, and the animal charging toward him, wrapping itself around his legs, was none other than Dakota, the dog he had held in his arms during his final days of freedom. Elias dropped to his knees, pulling Dakota close, its joyful barking echoing down the empty hall like a suppressed sob that had been building up for 5 years. "You still remember me?" Dakota nestled into his chest, groaning softly. It didn't need time to recognize him. It had never forgotten. Marla gasped for breath, her eyes blurred with tears. "I don't know if we're in time, but we're here, the three of us." Elias looked at her, his hardened face softening. "They won't let you leave here easily." "No one is going anywhere," Marla said, pulling a sealed folder from her jacket. "There's this." and someone's risking their life to get it into the right hands. In the warden's office, Holt was battling against time and a system of power that didn't want the truth to surface. He couldn't send information to the governor because the system had been compromised. He couldn't use federal police because no one would believe a 62-year-old man with an unverified file. So he had only one option: bring everything to light immediately for the entire public. He called his assistant, prepare to broadcast to the entire prison system, then connect to the emergency network. We're going live from here. No permissions, no approvals needed. The assistant gaped. You want to make a statement yourself? I want to save an innocent man. 2 a.m. The broadcast began. Screens in the cells, meeting rooms, security rooms, and even the cafeteria all simultaneously displayed images of Warden Holt, no longer the prison warden, but the whistleblower of justice. I am Franklin Holt, warden of the Carver Federal Penitentiary. This is a public statement addressed to every citizen of the United States. I am in possession of evidence showing that a death row inmate named Elias Monroe was wrongfully convicted in a case manipulated by an underground financial organization with the help of an individual named Walton Green. The prison was in shock. Many officers stopped in their tracks, staring at the screen. In the central processing room, engineers tried to cut the signal but had been locked out of admin rights by Holt just 30 seconds earlier. I am releasing all documents, images, and electronic data to the public sharing system. If anyone tries to block it, a copy will automatically be sent to hundreds of independent journalists within the next 5 minutes. At the end of the hall where Elias knelt beside Dakota, a sound echoed from the speaker overhead. We are reopening the case. The execution has been postponed. Marla looked up. Elias covered his face and broke into tears. They had just gained more time. 7 a.m. News of Warden Holt's unexpected broadcast spread like wildfire. Less than 10 minutes later, social media was flooded with clips of the explosive statement. Late-night news channels adjusted their live broadcasts. The hashtag Elias Monroe exploded on Twitter. While the nation was still groggy with sleep, a media earthquake had officially begun. In a quiet office in the west of Chicago, Walton Green threw his phone on the desk, his jaw clenched. The silver-haired man, dressed in a sleek black suit, skimmed through the urgent legal team's updates. Holt's gone mad. He's shooting himself in the foot. It doesn't matter, Green growled. Shut down all reposts, file a defamation lawsuit first thing in the morning, and call the prosecutor. Tell him not to breathe a word. A young assistant trembled. Sir, the original data has been forwarded to over 200 email addresses, including the Chronicle and the Post. Green froze. He understood immediately. The media battle had slipped out of his hands, and if he didn't extinguish the fire within the next few hours, he would be the one burned alive. 22 a.m. At Carver Prison, Elias was taken out of the death row unit and temporarily moved to a special protection room. Marla walked beside him, still holding Dakota's leash despite being exhausted. Travis, the young officer who had been suspended, appeared with an additional file. I've got an audio recording of a call between Green and a key witness. It hasn't been released yet, but with the way news is spreading, I bet everyone will know by tomorrow morning. Elias looked at Travis, his eyes filled with suspicion. Why are you doing this? Risking your career for me? Travis gave a wry smile. Because I used to think the law was the right thing in life. But then I realized it's only right when someone dares to keep it that way. The next morning, the state governor officially ordered a permanent stay of execution and launched a special investigation into the former prosecutor and his financial ties to Walton Green. Green, now no longer a powerful tycoon, had become the central suspect in a massive judicial manipulation case. As for Elias, he wasn't a free man, but for the first time in 5 years, he was no longer seen as a criminal. That evening, in the prison infirmary, Elias sat on a plastic chair, Dakota resting her head on his lap, breathing evenly. Marla had fallen asleep beside him, holding the file as if it were the fragile life they had just reclaimed. He stroked Dakota's fluffy fur, his eyes turned toward the small window, where the first rays of dawn were breaking through the bars. No one knew what the future would hold. But at least, justice had knocked on the door once more. 5:30 a.m. On a rare morning in the past 5 years, Elias woke up not to the sound of an alarm or the footsteps of guards, but to the gentle barking of Dakota. The dog lay beside him, her eyes shining as if she could see everything that humans could not. Elias sat up and looked out the small window. The dawn light stretched over the distant buildings, but inside him, there was still an immense void. Could life ever continue as before? It was then that the phone in the cell rang. Marla walked in, her face tense but unable to hide a glimmer of hope. Elias, I have news. The court has received a copy of the audio recording of Walton Green's call. Everything is about to come to light. He looked at her, feeling as though it was all just a dream. Is that so? He exhaled, his heart heavy. But it's not over yet. Green has enough power to turn everything around. They won't let us off the hook. Marla sat beside him, taking Elias's hand. But this will change everything, Elias, because we don't just have the video evidence and Green's testimony. We also have Dakota. 10 a.m. In a tense courtroom meeting, lawyers, prosecutors, and witnesses were all present. Every eye was on the man sitting in the room next door, Walton Green. But when the trial began, something unexpected happened. Marla stood up, walked to the podium, and handed the judge a thick file. She looked around, then spoke. We've discovered an important piece that everyone overlooked. We have a witness, a special witness. The crowd in the room erupted, all eyes turning toward Marla. She pointed toward the door and gestured for someone to enter. And then Dakota entered the room. Dakota, the German shepherd, walked steadily alongside a woman in business attire, Marla. The light reflected off its thick fur, showcasing its strength, loyalty, and devotion. But not everyone understood why this dog was so important. Marla began to explain. On the night of the murder, just as Elias was set up, Dakota witnessed a secret meeting between Green and a group of strangers. However, it wasn't just a matter of witnessing. It was how Dakota identified and reacted to certain elements of the meeting that only this dog could perceive. Marla emphasized the key point. We investigated and discovered that Dakota is part of a scene that pinpoints the exact time and place of the individuals present at the scene that night. This dog, with its exceptional sensitivity, was pulled into a situation that, without it, we would never have known who was truly behind the crime. The evidence, Marla pointed out, was not something anyone could simply see. The security camera footage around the crime scene only captured images. But Dakota was a silent witness, with the memory of a smart dog, retaining every detail that only an animal sensitive to sound and sensation could feel. Dakota's ability to recognize voices and trace the scent of Walton Green was documented during the investigation. Specifically, on the night of the crime, Dakota showed significant signs of distress when coming into contact with those linked to Green. This was analyzed by experts and proven that the dog recognized the sound or scent of this fixer. Finally, when the investigators brought the digital files and Green's scent into the courtroom, everyone was shocked to realize that Dakota truly was a crucial witness, even though it couldn't speak a word. Walton Green was arrested, and the bigger shock came when the digital evidence completely overturned the conclusions of the case. A new investigation was launched with a team of forensic experts, police, and judges. That evening, when the trial ended, Elias sat on a park bench, staring at the star-filled sky. Dakota lay beside him, its eyes shimmering not only from exhaustion, but also from those precious moments of friendship. Dakota hadn't just saved his life. The dog was the only witness who had helped turn the truth around in a case that seemed beyond saving. And from that moment on, Elias not only regained his freedom, but also had a friend, a loyal teammate. Dakota, the one special witness who had saved his life.